Inquisitors.
Bastards.
Named men.
Lend us your steels. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're very excited to be doing part 1 of a planned 3 episodes talking about the First Law. Today we're going to be talking about what is our favorite action within Abercrombie's Lord Grimdark's First Law. 9 books within it. And today we have been graced with the presence of 2 awesome booktubers, 2 of our favorites, and that is Philip Chase and Mike Book Reviews. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, guys. Such 2 wonderful and esteemed gentlemen. I remember Mike Book Reviews, that was the first kind of booktuber that we watched on BookTube, and that was amazing. So much fun to watch. And then Philip Chase, your chat about the Faith and the Fallen really got us into kind of thinking, oh, we might actually give this a go ourselves. So that was great fun. So what an honor to have both of these gentlemen on our channel today. So thank you so much. So Mike, would you be able to give yourself an introduction, what you do on your channel?
Well, the pleasure is all on this end, my guys. Look, with me getting to talk to the man who's given me so much pain and misery, talk to the joyous parts of his life, his two young sons here. That's a pleasure for me. And I mean that in the best way. You guys know that I love Papa there. But my channel really is just a channel where I said it's okay to disagree. It's okay to talk about these things. It's okay to talk about books that I love. I'm going to tell you why I like them. And if you disagree, hey, that's great. Let's talk about it. We can still be pals after. So that's always kind of what I've been. But I kind of really started the channel Wheel of Time. And I said, okay, is this Wheel of Time that's taking off? Or is this something that I could do? So I started doing First Law. And then everybody was so kind of, I think I probably influenced a couple thousand people now to read First Law. And that means everything to me. So yeah, First Law is always going to be something very, very special to me. It's my favorite modern fantasy series. So behind only Tolkien, there's not very much things I like to talk about more than First Law. So thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mike. And how about yourself, Philip?
Well, first of all, it's an honor to be here with you two. I am an admirer of your channel, and I've said it many times, but I'll say it again. I love the dynamic between you brothers, and the fact that that your Gwynne's is kind of a bonus, because I have been absolutely thrilled to be reading your father's books this year. I'm 1 book away from finishing all the published ones, so it's been a thrill. But yeah, thank you so much for having me here. And Mike, it's always great to chat with you. Likewise. So, and Mike is a guy who's gotten me to read. Actually, he was instrumental in getting me to read The Faithful and the Fallen, and as well as Stephen King and other things. So, yeah, I've been a fan of Lord Grimdark, of Abercrombie's books for actually much longer than I've had a YouTube channel. He was one of the fantasy authors that I read years and years ago. But definitely one of the authors that I am most excited to talk about, and certainly in my top 5 among all fantasy writers of all time. So it's really cool to be here talking with you 3 gentlemen, and thanks so much.
Well, I mean, thanks, Philip, and thanks, Mike. I think most of our viewers will definitely have watched your channels, but if they somehow have not, we'll put links in the description below to both your channels and some of your First Law videos as well, as we all love these works. And before we get into some spoilers, why don't we have a little chat about what we love about Lord Grimdark's Abercrombie's action? What is it that really engages us and allows us to have this more in-depth conversation just about action alone, which I don't think you could do with many authors, really.
Who's going first? Me or you, Philip? Let's sort this out now. Who's going first? Me or you?
Well, we could arm wrestle for it, but
you would win. I saw your guns video. You would win. So why don't you go ahead? I forfeit.
Well, I will say one thing, and I might chime in later again, but one of the biggest selling points behind, it's not the only one by any means, but that's what we're here to discuss today, is the action of the First Law books. And I believe we're going to start with the original trilogy, the First Law trilogy, and then sort of chronologically move through the standalones. And then we'll talk about the new ones, right? The Age of Madness.
Yeah.
So throughout, one thing that characterizes Abercrombie action scenes, and something that I think is just so skillfully done, is the perspective shifting that goes on. And this is something he does in the midst of battle scenes all the time. So we're with one character for a page or two, and then suddenly shift. And we're with another character, shift. And this just keeps the pace going, bang, bang, bang. And it's brilliantly done. It's really brilliantly done for many reasons. One of which is I really like the fact that in the midst of this action, which is breathtaking, we're getting these, sometimes the characters whose perspectives we're getting are actually opposed to one another. And so we're with the one character and we're on that side, and then suddenly we're on this other side. And it's really tough. It's nerve-wracking because we're actually rooting for both sides in a sense, because we're with these characters and we are sympathizing with them. We're in their boots on the ground. And not only that, but because Abercrombie is an author who's not afraid to do in characters, the stakes are high. The stakes are high. You never know when, a character you like might just bite it. So that's cool. I think I'll take over, but what Abercrombie does in the midst of battle scenes with that perspective shift stuff that's a technique I've noticed him applying more and more outside of the violence, that he does it more and more to ratchet up the tension and really effectively. So it's a really cool thing. Now I want to give some examples of that much later on, obviously, when we get into the specifics, but he's a master of the perspective in order to get the reader invested in the scene. And that is a big part of why I think his action is so awesome.
Yeah,
I think he was always. Oh, I'm sorry. You're going to respond first?
No, you take it. You take it away.
I think for me, kind of playing off what Philip said here is I thought that the action in the first trilogy was good. I wouldn't say it was anything really unique that I hadn't read before. But once we got to like the heroes, he started doing that perspective thing that Philip was talking about. And I'm sure he wasn't the first author to do this, but it was the first one I had read do this, where you're having like a battle sequence and whoever killed the person who just died, he then shifts to the perspective of the person who just did that killing. Yeah. And it was, like he said, going from different side to side to side. I thought that kind of raised the stakes because something that he does so well, I was always talking about his great characters, is he gives you the viewpoint from both sides. So I don't feel like you're ever being like, okay, yeah, the Union is right and the Northmen are wrong. And you're never doing that in a lot of these battles. And so you're connected with all these characters where you don't really feel like, I don't know if there's someone I'm rooting for here. I don't want these characters I love to die, and with Joe, they're probably going to. So I think that really helps add to like the just kind of the visceral brutality of some of these fights, really putting you in the eyes of some of these, as he calls them, the little people in some of those channels, and seeing that, okay, outside those big players, it's the people on the ground that are fighting these wars, and you're seeing this stuff happening on the field. And I think that really just kind of ups the tension quite a bit, even before he gets into his very colorful descriptions of what's happening in these battles. So that was something with the heroes that I think it was really blew me away the first time I read it.
Yeah, I absolutely love how he does that kind of head hopping, those chapters like Casualties and the Heroes, like you just mentioned, Mike. It's so much fun and so engaging to read. And what I think, it always reminds me of the film The Revenant. I'm not sure if you guys have seen that, but at the beginning, there's a battle between the Native Americans and the frontiersmen, and it does exactly that. It shifts from perspective to perspective, so you see both sides of the conflict, like you mentioned as well, Philip. And to me, that's so much fun to read. What I love about Abercrombie's writing as well was that he's got such a range of action. He's got small skirmishes to duels in the circle to massive sieges and then great battles. That the tactics always feel spot on to me. And I think he perfectly captures that sense of chaos and brutality and really takes the glorification out of war. And he does that through his characters, through their thoughts, as well as the brutality on the field as well. So that's one thing I love about his writing.
You fight in a circle, I'm all about it. Yeah.
I'm in, and I'm just going to add something that all three of you mentioned and put really well. That idea of that it is very gritty, especially with the head hopping. But I think in every conflict he has, it feels authentic, doesn't it? We're in a fantasy world, but it's like if this was real, this is what it would actually be like, and that's something that I think that I love to engage in, really, where you can really relate to a story in that way and feel like this is real. And it also brings you a lot closer to the characters, I feel, and also the world. So Joe Abercrombie uses action not just for action's sake, does he? He uses it to enforce every other sphere of the story.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Sorry.
Please, Philip. Take it away, Doctor.
Right. Just one little tiny other thing, and as I was thinking about as you guys were talking, that perspective shift business. is a really great technique as well to give you the sense of chaos that is a battle. That you have all, of course, the generals and the people in charge have all these plans, right? But as Mike said, we're getting the perspective of the foot soldier, the person in the midst of it. And that constant shifting is something that gives you this just, you can't even orient yourself. You hardly know what's going on. And I think that it's a great job of duplicating the chaos of battle. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're going to be talking about that quite a lot as we get further into this chat. But now we're going to get into some spoilers for the original First Lord trilogy. So if you have read the First Lord trilogy, then please stick around. We're only going to be talking about this part in the first section of the video. I think let's just dive straight in. As you said, Ed, there's such a huge variety of conflict, isn't there? And I think that the Blade itself, it goes a lot smaller scale, but it still has a lot of my favorite action sequences in there. And so maybe Mike first, have you got any that spring to mind for the First Lord trilogy?
I'll start somewhat small because I know everybody's going to expect you to talk about a battle here. I gotta think the first instance where I felt like, okay, I'm definitely reading something different here was in the Blade itself. And this is when Brimmer, Dan Gorst, and Jazal are fighting in the tournament there. And I just thought it was just really, as a sports fan, I was like, this feels like something that would be really, I mean, obviously this is like gladiators here. We're not fighting to the death or nothing, but I was like, this feels very much like I'd be watching sports living in this world. And then, that big twist that happens with, that you find out about with a certain wizard really helped kind of make it stick in my memory, of course. But at the time, while I was reading, I was like, wow, Jazal is actually going to come back. You're going to blow a 3-1 lead, Gorst. Really good. And then, you come to love Gorst so much that I think on a reread, you appreciate that scene even more.
Yeah. Absolutely, I love that, the whole contest. And it kind of reminds you of kind of A Knight's Tale as well, that kind of medieval style tournaments that people just love to watch as well. So
and it's also when I realized that Baez, not quite the Gandalf figure that I thought he was. He subverted that real quick.
Yeah, and he does not start, does he? He proves it again and again.
Gandalf did have his grumpy moments, though.
Yeah. He did. Maybe not on quite the same scale.
There's grumpy, then there's Baez grumpy.
Yeah.
He didn't blow up people into a red mist. No.
Well, we never know.
He's not on page. We don't know.
Yeah, why do we think he quit his firework making business? He obviously got into some trouble, maybe.
maybe. But now, Philip, what are some that spring out to you? Maybe what's the first one that comes to mind?
Well, I have a feeling that this entire discussion could, if we wanted, center on Logan Nine Fingers alone. I mean, the guy is just an action machine and totally a standout character for me. And I think a fan favorite, it's probably fair to say.
Yeah.
But for me, I'll tell you what, the first time I read The Blade itself, that opening scene, just the opening scene where we've got this dude, Logan Nine Fingers, who is running for his life, and he's being chased by these mysterious, kind of orc-like creatures, the Shanka. And right away that this writer is doing something different, because we don't have this, bold hero who's perfectly coordinated, and I mean, he's like falling on his face and he's rolling in the dirt. It's just, and we're feeling the intensity of it. I mean, my heart is beating along with it. And ultimately he gets dragged over the edge of the cliff there. And then for a while, the Shank is like gnawing on his leg there. And, I mean, that opening scene just told me so many things, that I am reading an author who is doing something really cool and pretty different from your standard fantasy. I think that was just a non-heroic, brutal opening that shows you that this guy's going to have his characters in the mud, both in the way Abercrombie would use that phrase and the way I meant it originally, which is they're going to get dirty and things are going to get nasty. And so that opening scene, man, with Logan just blew me away. And I thought, okay, I'm going to like these books. As much as I've heard people criticize The Blade itself for not having a lot of plot and all of that sort of thing, I was reading that like page after I was totally immersed in that book. And I think it's because of the really well done action scenes, but also the great characters, of course. So
can we even call those people, though, Philip? People that criticize The Blade itself? Those are
Sinners.
Shankas.
We'll call them sinners. Yeah. No, I completely agree, Philip. That opening scene is just wonderful, and it's poor Logan as well. You immediately feel like he's really going down a bad path when he falls off the cliff. He really has gone down one. I think that one of the immediate scenes that sticks out to me in the blade itself was with Dogman's crew and Three Trees. They're planning a little kind of an ambush in the woods with some of Bethod's, I think, warriors are sitting around a campfire. And Three Trees gives them a bit of a speech, and then Black Dow is arguing with Talduru. Awesome characters.
Never happens. Black Dow arguing? No.
I know. The first time ever and the last. And then I think Three Trees says to Dogman, I'll give you a signal when to start shooting your bow. And then they walk off, they get into their positions, and then Dogman's like, what was the signal? I can't remember. And he's looking around at everyone, and it just seems like everyone's so confused. And then it just goes into chaos. And I love how it's small scale. And it still kind of captures that sense of, like you said earlier as well, Philip, that chaos and the confusion surrounding, even when there's just 5 or 6 of you and you've kind of planned it out, everyone knows their job. And I loved it. And then immediately, obviously straight away, a 16-year-old, I think that's how old I was when I read the Blade itself, reading all that gore and all of the visceral details. I loved it. I ate it up.
Yeah, I think that it's awesome as it builds on characters so much, doesn't it? That Dogman, that from the beginning that he's a veteran, he's been through this so many times, and he even says it, and yet still he's so confused. There's always a plan, but it's like plans are made to be broken, basically. And I think, as you taught in the first chapter as well, Philip, that idea of chaos and how Joe Abercrombie managed to make you invested and tense in the first chapter, that's a feat into itself, isn't it? I don't think many authors could do that, and I think he strikes the line where he shows the chaos, but he mixes it with that characterization, where as many authors, I think they go a bit one way or the other, but for me, he just gets that perfect balance, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And then maybe one I'll mention, one that really stuck out to me in the Blade itself is when we first really meet the Bloody Nine, and obviously throughout the entirety of the Blade itself, he's been mentioned here and then. You just think that, oh, that's just been a name that's been attributed to him. It's just his reputation. And I had no idea what was coming. And then he's obviously backed in the corner with Pharaoh. And I was like, how are they going to get out of this one? And then I quickly found out, and I was just shocked when he becomes the Bloody Nine and how just everything about him changes, and the whole description of that scene. I actually stopped reading for about 10-15 minutes afterwards. I just need to really just think of what happened. And
I reread the first few paragraphs so many times. I was like, hang on a minute, wait, but it's Logan. Why is he being like this? Who is this Bloody Nine? And then you really discover who he is. I love it. It's so much fun. What do you guys think of the Bloody Nine?
The perfect mix of Conan the Barbarian and Bruce Banner, I think. Don't make me angry. That's the way I always kind of looked at it. I kind of had the same thing as you guys. Like, okay, he's done some stuff in his past, but right away he's helped Malachus Quiet when he didn't have to help him, and things like that. I was like, okay, so this is a good dude down there, but they keep you talking about, okay, so he's done some really. I thought he was just a badass in his past. So I'm not expecting him to actually be the Hulk, So when it actually does happen, it's like, wow, yeah, this is definitely different. But yeah, any moment with Logan in this series, be it Logan fighting Fenris the Feared or anything like that, any of those moments, I think, where he has something in the circle is always some of my favorite action in the first trilogy.
Mm. Yeah, it's just that I think that he also very clever, gave him a lot of exploration of characters, isn't it? That you can see it from Logan's perspective, and then the Bloody Nine and how different they are. It works on everything that he's done before, that chaos, the anarchy that's really just everywhere. But and also the gravitas, it invests you in Logan so much more because you really understand his self-loathing. But at the same time, you're like, it's not your fault. You just need to. You just need to forgive yourself. It's
have
not
a cup of tea.
Just stay away from
the
bloodshed.
blanket. Yeah, exactly. Stay away. Yeah.
Here, let me volley this one to Philip. Would you consider Logan and Pharaoh's getting intimate? Would you consider that an action scene? Because say one thing for Logan Nine Fingers, say that he's a lover.
Oh yeah, and of course the word squelch is in there. If the word squelch is there, it's action, I guess.
Yeah. I had the same reaction to that as I would action, Casualties chapter, same feeling, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, the guy is such a great character. And a lot of it is that Abercrombie so successfully gets you to feel for this guy and invest in him. Even when before you know what the Bloody Nine is, you like this guy. He's likable. He's trying to be a better person. And we can all sympathize with that, right? We're on his side. And then this Bloody Nine thing emerges and you're horrified at the same time. And it's, how can I like this guy so much and be terrified of him at the same time? It's a real Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of thing. And it's just so brilliantly, it's such a great part of that character. It's probably a big reason why. I also think just that for me, Abercrombie's at his very best when he's doing the Northman. I think that voice is so good. I love the humor. It can be very dry sometimes. But yeah, and for me, Logan just sort of is the essence of that northernness, I guess. So yeah.
I love that he holds the Bloody Nine back as well. He doesn't, throw him in there in the first chapter. He feels like he knows what he wants to achieve, and that's what makes the Blade itself even better, because he feels like a very confident writer, and he's very accomplished. And the way he manages to hold him back and then just sprinkle him in every so often, it leaves the reader really wanting for more. So it's a good technique.
And I think I'll comment on that you see in Before They're Hanged, you've heard about what happened to Logan's family, to the Shanker, and you've got a copy there. And I remember when he becomes the Bloody Nine, when he sees the Shanker again in Before They're Hanged, it reveals so much characterization, doesn't it? That he's so calm and controlled and thoughtful all the time, but all that just goes out the window as soon as he sees the Shanker, and that just rage returns, doesn't it? And it just shows like everyone, he may be more he may have these emotions to a greater extremity, but we all have that range of emotions, don't we? That we can be calm and thoughtful, but we can be angry at other times. And he takes
that angry.
No, he takes it. He does take it to the next level. But again, it's just something that I love, that those characters intertwined with the action as well.
Agreed.
Awesome. And maybe should we start talking about a bit more of the bigger action sequences then? I love how in Before They're Hanged, you've got such a wide range, haven't you, of Glockta going to the siege of Dagoska, which is very prolonged, and that is that's very different, but kind of chaos to the very quick, fast-paced ones that you see in the battles. But similarly, I felt so tense every time it returned to Glockta, and again, it's that idea of how is he going to sort this out? And
because he's not like Logan, he can't fight his way out or get the Bloody Nine to come and help. He's hasn't got a Hulk kind of creature with him.
Well, he's got Nakomo Casca.
Very important, actually. I think the Casca's role in that whole thing as the jester, in a sense, and this kind of very, this is not a very reliable individual, but he's weirdly probably capable in some ways.
Yeah, he's very competent, just not very loyal.
Right.
He's too honest. Exactly. He's too honest. He's, immediately he tells all the characters that he's happy to sell himself out.
Yeah. There is a line, I think it's in Last Argument with Kings, where he's with Glockta and Glockta says, "Have you brought the men?" And he says, "I'm unreliable, not incompetent." And I just found that so funny. That he's so self-aware, isn't he? And I love that scene in Before They're Hanged, where there's attack on the battlements in Dagoska, and Casca, he knows in this scenario he's not going to be able to get out of it for this day at least, and so he just throws himself into it. And Glockta's shocked, like, who is this madman? And he's just running, screaming, and he seems quite happy. And it shows again that characterization that he'll avoid it if he can, but if he's put into danger, he won't run away from it. He will embrace it. And he's quite aware and, okay, if I do this, I'm more likely to survive. And he takes that route of action. And Casca, I have to say, he is one of my favorite characters in the whole of the first Lord.
Good drink. So much fun.
Stephen Pacey's narration and his voice for Casca are so brilliant.
I gotta listen to these one day. Too many people talk about these damn audiobooks.
I
feel like I know the story enough now. Who cares if I miss something,
Yeah. You need to, you definitely do.
Oh, you'd love it. And listening to someone read off the Logan, the Pharaoh romance, shall I say, is you could be sitting there making yourself a cup of tea or something, and you're just listening to that, and it's really disturbing, but it's so funny.
Is that what you said you were listening to on the bus?
Yeah, I
was
listening to the bus once.
Feels like you're trying to sneak Playboys from your parents or something when you're younger.
So another, I think it's in Before They're Hanged, big moment for me, action moment, would be involving Colin West. And when he's assigned to be up in the north, and he's sort of babysitting Ladisla or Ladislaw. And there's that part where he snaps.
Furious.
Snaps. And initially, I mean, I'm including a couple sequences here, but he kills Ladislaw, who is kind of like, good, nice.
That was
nice
the beginning
job.
of his redemption arc, in my opinion. You know,
he
fucked up in book 1, but I was like, all right, this guy's got something going.
I mean, there's something there, but you know that like Black Dow has been prodding him all this time. And what's the nickname they give him after he
Furious.
Furious. Oh yeah, Furious, man. And when there's that skirmish that they have, and he just, I mean, it's such a haze, the whole thing. It's so well done.
Yeah.
But the fact that you have this character, Colin West, who seems like a very gentle, decent kind of guy. We've got hints that he was he imbibed some of the abusive behavior of his father. And there was that whole really kind of traumatizing scene with his sister, with RD, where he hits her. But you realize that I think it's actually a pretty brilliant thing. Again, that psychology major, when you get characters like this who have this exterior of being very civilized, very pleasant, nice guy, seems like just one of the nicer characters in the First Law world. But then he's got this rage inside him, and it's something I think that if people are honest, there's that beast part of us and you get poked and prodded enough by a guy like Black Dow, and it might just emerge. And if you're in a situation where it's life or death, what's going to come out, you don't know. So I just love what Abercrombie does with that character, with Colin West. I'm pretty sure it's in Before They're Hanged.
No, it definitely is. Black Dow, the humor that is in with the action as well is one of my favorite parts of Abercrombie's writing. But the way they all interact with each other, and then they give him kind of a northern nickname, and Colin West is like, oh no, but he's also done something that we think is good, because Prince Ladislaw was not a nice guy, and what he was doing to Cat Hill was not nice whatsoever. So he had it coming. Yeah. And but still Colin West feels so guilty.
If Black Dow praises you got to be careful, don't you? You got to think there's something not going right here. I think at the end of the last line of that chapter is Black Dow saying, I could grow to like you, or something like that. And I was like, oh no, this is not a good thing. And I think again that shows Joe Abercrombie's patience, doesn't it? We're saying about not having too many scenes with the Bloody Nine. I think that throughout the first half of Before They're Hanged, Colin West is getting tenser and tenser. He's put to kind of overlook Ladislaw, but he can't overrule him. And all these kind of armchair generals like, we'll send the cavalry and they'll wipe them away. With a union. And then the first battle where they see their cavalry returning and West knows there's something wrong. And you just feel, I'm not quite sure how Joe Abercrombie does it, but you just feel this really ominous atmosphere.
A drumbeat of dread, isn't it?
Yeah. And then you realise that it's not the Union cavalry, it's the Northmen, and they just thunder into them all and take out the entire camp. And that was the first major action sequence, and I was just blown away. Similarly to Dagosca actually falling, it shows that in most fantasy books, the good guys eventually win, don't they? But in this, well, there are no good guys in this for starters, but also that they're not going to win every battle. They're not going to win every battle or lose it. Most of them end with everyone losing, basically. And this was just one of those examples where West just about gets away with his life with just a few others. And it really set a precedent, didn't it, for what's going to happen for the rest of this series.
And he's so helpless, based on kind of his birth and who he is. He's so helpless. Like, you feel like Logan can kind of bring the fellowship of the seed. He can get them through the tough times, but West, you feel he's so helpless. He can't really do much in the grand scheme of a whole army. So yeah, I like how he progresses and ends up with the Northmen. But moving on to the fellowship of the seed, then I think there is an action sequence where Jezzel kind of almost has his moment to shine and then takes a swift mace to the face.
Oh, he's so happy with himself, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought he had actually killed him off there. I was like, whoa, shit. All right, so now we're killing POV characters off. This guy is serious. Yeah, I was
I love the whole interaction between that group. But you see the kind of Pharaoh's, her archer abilities and her quiet anger, and then Logan kind of pulls through, and then Jezzel. Poor Jezzel, he really does have his moment and then gets totally knocked on his ass.
I think he kills one of them, and he actually turns around to Malachus quiet and he says, "I did it," or something like that. And then Malachus points behind him and he's like, "What?" And then he looks behind and then just bam, it goes black.
And I love when they're stitching up his face. And
I don't think there's a character that Joe likes beating up or just treating more shittily than Jezzel.
Yeah.
Poor Jezzel.
He goes through so much.
And then when Logan looks at him and he's like, "You've got a scar, you're like us," and Jezzel's like, "Oh no. I'm like them."
After he spent the journey saying that
is such a brilliant example too of how well Abercrombie uses action for character development.
It's to become close.
It's not just action for action's sake. It is really such an important part of our journey with Jezzel there, and revealing what, so much of his character, and we kind of start liking him. He's not quite the jerk that we've gotten to know.
I like Jezzel from the beginning.
Okay, well, he's a brilliant character, but he's kind of a jerk. Yeah. But he starts to kind of emulate Logan there. He starts to look up to him, and he's starting to try to make overtures to the other members of the party. Like, this is going to be a quest group, right? So we need to, see the humanity in each other. And then the mace to the face is like, boom,
That's
dose of reality.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I just love, I think he's so funny, and I think speaking to Joe, and he has a quote in the back of the book, doesn't he? That he says Gillian Redfern, his editor, is Bayaz, and he feels like Jezzel. So it's quite funny.
Nice.
So if moving on to the end of Before They're Hanged, one of the moments, I think don't think too many people talk about the first law and talk about what kind of the emotional scenes. But what made me emotional was when Three Trees went back to the mud. With his brutal fight with
my heart. One by one losing that group. I really, really grew to love that crew. After Logan left them, and just one by one, seeing him drop, just heartbreaking. Yeah,
I just thought he'll leave us a few, won't he? He takes out Forley in the Blade itself. I was like, oh no. Then he takes out Three Trees, and I was like, okay, he has to leave the rest. Maybe he'll kill one more. Yeah. I think I even said to you, I think he'll kill one more in Last Night Kings, and then. How wrong I was. No, I was a very naive person last month.
You've changed.
I'm very different.
You've gone through your rite of passage. You're aware.
That means a lot, knowing who your dad is, that you guys were thinking characters were going to live through this. That's great.
I think we're too hopeful. We're far too hopeful.
It's hope that we allow it to make us just believe 100%.
Yeah, but I love that battle at the end of Before They're Hanged when Shivers turns up as well. And the horror of the Shankar, I think, it's one of the few fantasy elements that Joe Abercrombie has. It's a very, very low fantasy world, apart from when Bayaz kind of loses his mind a little bit a few times and gets a little bit angry. But I love how all of the Northmen feel so appalled that Bethod is using the Shankar, and it kind of makes them even more angry. And then the fight against Fenris the Feared, where it feels like they're fighting this just unholy beast that they cannot beat whatsoever. And it plays into the Last Argument of Kings so well with the ending, because it makes you feel like none of them could defeat Fenris the Feared. So how was Logan going to do it in the circle on his own?
That was my Gandalf versus the Balrog moment, kind of right there. Not quite on the same scale, but that it's like how's it going to be? How is he actually living through this?
Yeah. Never underestimate the Bloody Nine.
Never.
No. I have people all the time when I do like a live stream, like, who would win in a fight between the Bloody Nine? And I'm like, Bloody Nine.
Yeah.
Don't even finish the sentence.
Part two.
I don't think anybody's beating him in the circle. Sorry.
I always think, Bloody Nine versus Gorst. That would be an amazing fight. But
that would be like one of those like 14-hour fights, and then it's like, all right, let's break for the day. And we'll pick back up tomorrow.
Yeah, that's like skill versus ferocity.
Yeah. But the Bloody Knight, he will not stop, will he? Even if he's dying. I think I love how it slowly drip feeds his relationship with the rest of the group, even when they're separate. And he says, I think Hardin Grim stabbed him through his entire body with his own spear, and he carried on fighting and won. And then afterwards, he's like, oh, I have a spear.
I love the whole group and their camaraderie is based on Logan beating them all up. And they were just like, yeah, okay. It's very primal, but I just love their relationship as well.
Yeah. Well, they're very pragmatic, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
And that leads into the action. And I think maybe returning to the end of Before they are hanged. That battle, I think, is so clever. Abercrombie mentions a while before that Shivers wants to join Three Trees because of the Shankar, but he plays up more that it's about Fenris the Feared. So you almost kind of forget that Bethod has this relationship with the Shankar. And so then when they turn up during the battle, it's such a shock, and you really feel it in the Dogman and the whole crew's reaction, don't you? And again, I think it's one of those moments that I think I'll remember it months and years to come as one of the moments that really made the series jump up a notch, that the stakes are higher and everything is not as expected.
Absolutely. You guys ready to move on to my favorite book, Last Argument of Kings?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do
Absolutely.
I mean,
Mike, do you want to kick us off?
Get bigger for action than the Battle of Adwa, seeing what Baez can do when he's fucking unchained. I mean, that was just bananas. The last 1/3 of that book is just absolutely insane. And it's something, no spoilers, but it's something in the sequel trilogy that is still talked about because of how it completely changed the face of the nation there. So yeah, I think that's definitely the biggest battle in this entire series, as far as like how grand is and how reckless and how much destruction there is.
Yeah. And I think that he really, Joker really puts across how grand it is, doesn't he? Because you see it from Pharaoh's perspective. You see everything going on there. Jezal retreating further into Adua. And then you see it from Logan and West, from their perspective, seeing this city basically just topple in on them. And the carnage and everything that this battle is just creating. And Baez having such an instrumental role and just basically using everyone as puppets. Basically,
yeah,
and
it's
a
a
moment.
You so many answers during that stuff. You get like the Yoro Sulfur reveal and all this. That's a fun name to say. Can you say that name once fast? Yoro Sulfur. I don't know. Maybe it's just
that'll be the next challenge.
Yeah, have a few beers and try saying that.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right, Mike. That is just pinnacle of the trilogy, is that battle and the unleashing. This is the first time. I mean, we've gotten hints before, but the unleashing of Baez's magic with the seed, of course.
I was thinking that the seed was just going to be a big. Oh, it actually wasn't nothing at all. So, because I thought he was trying to subvert it so bad that it wasn't actually going to do anything. So I was wrong.
Well, he did subvert it first. I mean, he subverted the whole quest thing, but then he's like, "Oh, here it is. It's in the So, but for me, actually, what I remember even more is what happens in the north, and with Logan and the Circle and Fenris the Feared. That part. Not only though the Circle, but how after somehow or other the Bloody Nine triumphs, afterwards he goes and kills Bethod.
Oh man, that scene.
That is some intense stuff right there. That is like some of the most brutal, raw, bloody stuff in the entire trilogy. I think when he gets Bethod, and it's whoa, and it's one of those moments where you're like, this is going to have some really bad repercussions, I think.
Yeah.
And also where you've had a Bethod kind of set up to be the boogeyman this whole book, and you're like, what, was he though? You know, that's the thing. That's what I love that the series does. It makes you, well, were they the bad guy? You know, did the bad guys win here? Maybe is Logan the bad guy? You know, you never know these things. That's what I love about it.
I think
that's why it makes Black Dow's actions at the end so understandable, you know, and you can 100% see his point of view, which makes it so good. You know, I see lots of people say they hate Black Dow, but I can't hate Black Dow because of what he did. Because
what about Black Dow's side quest to take out the witch? I love that too. I mean, that's the only reason Logan wins that fight. So,
right, that's right.
Yeah, that added to the tension, absolutely.
And he's the one who's just not fazed by her. That Dogman and Harding Grim were like, "Oh, you want us to stab the other one?" Okay. And then Black Dow just runs in there, and he just does not get. It's just, even then, he just adds a moment of humor that it doesn't take away from the duel that's going on outside. He just balances it so well, because you can't have a book that is just tension the whole way through. You've got to have little troughs as well as those peaks, don't you? And he just places them perfectly. And I think
it says Black Dow was just misunderstood. You guys are reading them all wrong. read the heroes. You just be misunderstood.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a scene I'll talk about when we get to the standalones there with Black Dow that I really loved, and it added another side to him, I think. But we're nearly done with Mike's favorite book of The first law overall.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's definitely my favorite as well. I think the Bloody Nine comes to play here, and we see that he doesn't do only good things or good what we think is good. He also kills.
From the Jazal reveal to the end of that book is just the best stretch in any first law book. So and that was like in my memory, I was like, that happened towards the end of the book. I was like, man, that happens in like the first like 100 pages with Jazal the reveal, and I was like, holy hell! So when I did the reread, it was like, damn, this is so good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm so happy it's not a small book. It's a big chunky ones, and I love it, and I love all the set pieces. And when the Bloody Nine kills Talduruth, the Thunderhead, that's a bit of a heartbreaking scene. And then
son of Cromakithale as well.
That plays into how you see Dogman, not Dogman, Blackdale might have actually done the right thing, and Bethod, is he the bad guy? That kind of thing, and obviously that leads into Sharp Ends as well. I love that.
But if we're going to transition into those, I think we got to talk about the change in Shivers, because Shivers in the original trilogy quite different than what we get in the standalones. So I really think that standalones are really the Shivers trilogy. I mean, he's the mainstay character in all these, right?
Yeah.
So
I think quick shout out to Pharaoh Maldine though, before we move on to the standalones. Just quick shout out to her, because she's got some pretty badass moments. Pharaoh. Oh
yes, absolutely. I think she's a very, very underrated character. I mean, she has some of the greatest one-liners in the whole series.
Her swearing at Brother Longfoot is just so funny. I love it.
Good for fucking you.
I think he deserves it completely.
I love calling people pink. It's so good. I call my kids pink sometimes. What's that?
The irony that she's colorblind as well. And I think that's one of the conversations. It's so funny, so random, but so funny. And with Farah, in Last Argument with Kings, she knows someone's following her. And in the chapter 4, you have Glockter tell Severard to follow Farah. And he's like, do I have to?
Yeah.
And he's been happy to go to Dagoska. He's been happy to stay during a siege, but he's told to follow Pharaoh. And he's scared.
She's like the Bloody Nine all of the time.
Yeah, that just says everything, doesn't it?
Yeah. Definitely.
It's so good.
I think that leads nicely into Best Served Cold then. Talking about Shivers. So Shivers goes through quite the change, doesn't he? From potential young Logan on the right path to sod it, I'm going to be an evil man. And I'm just going to be who I am, really. So, I love that. And, Best Served Cold has a really good range of action, I think. And all as you said earlier, Philip, always action to further the plot. I
love this book so much. It's my favorite of the standalones. It's about everybody just about the heroes, I think, but I love Best Served Cold because I love Count of Monte Cristo. It's one of my favorite books ever. I really feel like it's Joe's version of that. Really is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think my favorite standout is probably just the heroes because of Gorst. He makes it so good for me. But Best Served Cold is so much fun, and Koska.
And I'm a Koska fan, so I mean that's like my second favorite character behind Glockta. So of course I love Best Served Cold. It's basically his book.
There are a few scenes here which I think are some of the best of any first law book. One, Cardotti's House of Pleasure. Do you want to talk about that? Mike, do you want to start talking about that scene?
I won't lie. I wanted, and I think that was Heroes or was that Best Served Cold? I wanted to see Gorst and Shivers throw down. I wanted to see that fight, but I didn't want to lose either of them. So I'm glad they didn't, That getting to see just all again, that was really cool. In a different perspective.
So funny.
But very, very good action scene. Shame the place burned down, but hey.
And the fake duel, how the action scene begins, and Friendly's just playing dice.
Oh no, I've thought about that.
with his
apologize to my dice. It just goes to chaos again.
Only Joe can write a character that strange, and it's some people's favorite. Friendly.
Yeah,
so funny. Yeah, absolutely.
Apologize to my dice.
He's so angry with his dice, but I love the fake duel with Shivers. I can't remember his name and the other Northman, but how Shivers, his internal monologue throughout the action is another thing I love about Abercrombie's writing. How they're consciously thinking, but it's not like these really long thoughts. How it feels very unbelievable. They're having these really philosophical thoughts while they're fighting. It's like very pragmatic, and it's like, oh crap! Okay, he's going a bit rough.
And I talked about this. We talked with on your channel about a year ago, I think. Me, you, and Petrick and Mark from Slowly Read. Yep. And I would say it's kind of wild when you think about these action scenes. It gets a reputation as just being so brutal and so tough to read. And I'm like, but we find ourselves laughing so much while reading these books. So I think that's what differentiates them from the rest of the grimdark stuff out there.
Yeah, I think sorry, Philip, Yeah, so I was going to say it's the ridiculous side of humanity. I mean, we are awkward creatures. We are pretty embarrassing at times, and we have some natural body functions that many writers don't necessarily highlight the way that Lord Grimdark does. So it's just so real, and I love that. I actually really think that's a hallmark of his books in general, is that he's not afraid to just portray us in all of our awkwardness, and it's just fantastic. Like Gorst in Cardades that's sort of like the setup for the heroes, isn't it? For his character arc, at least.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's an embarrassing moment for him, which gets fleshed out in the short stories in the Sharp Ends as well. But yeah, so I love that. I love that aspect of this, that unflinchingly portraying us in all of our just ridiculousness. So, and that's definitely part of the action too, because it's not fantasy. It's not classical fantasy action where it's graceful and epic and all of that. It's just
people tripping over shit.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think we come from a reenacting family, so obviously I haven't come close to the experience that anyone in the First Law or anyone who's actually done real combat has. But,
nor do we hope to.
Yeah, exactly.
I was about to say, do you want to?
No, definitely not. But I
don't think your dad would appreciate if you shit your chainmail.
Yeah, it's happened. But you've spar with people, you fight with people in a shield war, or just one-on-one, and these awkward things happen all the time. Like you slip on a piece of mud and you fall on your face, and it's like, okay, that's the end. That kind of thing, and it happens all of the time. Nothing is ever graceful. Nothing's like Legolas falling off of the Oliphant, in wonderful style. It never happens like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've fallen out of the shield wall when everyone's just stopped and stared at me, and then be like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
let's reform. And I think
not to derail too much, but I know Philip appreciates this. That's something that happened in the last Malazan book I read. Is this guy is like this protector? He's this ultimate badass. And right before the battle starts, he pulls his groin and he's worthless in the fight. And I was like, that's the kind of shit that would happen, especially when you're wearing that much plate. It's going to happen.
Oh, that's funny.
I can see that kind of stuff happening in First Law world for sure.
Yeah, I love reading stuff like that. That's actually what I noticed when I read Gardens of the Moon. The action was fantastic. For like Stephen Erickson has a real grasp of what actually you have to do. I think he used to do fencing, didn't he?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yes,
him and with Sebastian de Castell did like the actual fencing, so they write the sword fighting really, really well.
Yeah, exactly. So
whereas Joe hasn't done any actual warfare. It's amazing, right?
Yeah. Is there anything else that sticks out to mind with Best Served Cold for either of you?
For me, there's one moment where, and it's weird because this isn't the kind of series that he usually writes. It's a very like Princess Bride kind of sword fight that happens with Casca and Mansa and General Ganmark in Viscerine.
Yeah,
that seemed to me was just like something straight out of like Princess Bride or something. They're just sparring and they're jabbing at each other and they're talking shit. It's so good because it's Casca, But that scene always really stuck in my head. It's just one of the traditional fantasy kind of fun sword fight scenes.
Yeah.
Everything's falling apart around them, isn't it? And they're just going at it with each other, really, really. Yeah, talking to each other, and it's so funny.
And General Ganmark is like, "Oh, should I give you a blade back, and we'll start again?"
Yeah, it's kind of like I'm not left-handed either.
Yeah, exactly.
like Princess Bride. Yeah,
it feels so different to what Joe usually writes, but I really liked the kind of the tonal shift there. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, definitely.
There's another very brutal Casca moment. I think it's in Best Served Cold where there's a battle going on and there's some cannon involved and there's a big explosion, I think. Am I remembering this right?
Yeah, it's towards the end of Best Served
Cold. Toward the end where you get to the big climactic battle scene. Yeah. And everything just goes like there's this ring in his ears and everything's just like chaos all around. That is some great, that just for whatever reason, that moment just sticks out to me as just so brutal and just gruesome and
it's easy for us to here on the couch and be like, you idiot, why didn't you do this? You think about you're in that situation, shit's falling around, you have no idea what's going on, you're just like just like trying to hide,
you can't hear anything, and it just is so cinematic, isn't it? But like you say, Mike, we're sitting back here like, come on, you'll be fine, just go over there, but
get up, you idiot,
Come on.
But shake your ears, it'll be fine.
I love how Casca also uses that to get revenge as well, doesn't he? He's like, okay, I'm going to cause some chaos, but let's get some revenge first, and I'll mask the death, saying it was a big tragedy. And he runs back and he's like, I can't believe it, they saved my life.
I love that, man.
It's so funny. And I think I have to, it's one of my favorite scenes I've ever said. Gonna return back to Cardotti's House of Pleasure with that humor. I think when the deal, when Shivers, he's like, oh, this feels quite real. And then he hears one of the audience say, wow, these are amazing. I need to hire these for my daughter's wedding. And then it goes to Koska and he's like, okay, this is going to go downhill. And he thinks for a second. He's like, okay, I can help here. And then everything goes to chaos and he just runs out the back door as everything's going wrong. And he has that 1 second where you think he might get involved and he might help drag Shivers out. Time. But he's like, nope, I'm out of there. And I love just all those small humorous moments as well. It's even when Koska's killing people in cold blood, because of the way he does it, it just makes him such a, maybe not likable, but one of my favorite characters.
Oh, I'm laughing. He's committing full-blooded murder here. And I'm like,
Someone's like, what are you laughing at? And it's like, no, I can't tell you because it would just sound really bad. So
like how he builds, how he can't actually throw this knife. And then when he actually does land one of the knife throws, it's like a holy shit moment. Just simple stuff like that makes Koska so memorable for me.
So good. And in that last scene as well, the fight between Shivers and Friendly. And Shivers, he's fought some bad people, some great warriors as well. And he comes to Friendly and he's like, I'm going to have to kill you and I wish I didn't. And then they just destroy this room, don't they? And neither of them can get the upper hand. And I think that you still, even though you've seen how dangerous Friendly can be, you underestimate him in this scene. Because when I was reading it for certain, I thought, oh no, Shivers is going to kill him. I'm going to be really sad again. But nope, Friendly taught him a lesson as well, didn't he?
And again, why do we love Joe Abercrombie's action? Because he has you invested on both sides, because there is no right or wrong. And Friendly, such a strange, quirky character, you really get behind, even though he's got a few chapters and they're just talking about numbers. And then you've got Shivers, who you really feel that attachment with him to Logan, but you just feel so sorry for him for what he's been through, and you're so invested. I love that. And another
Shivers before the eye, I was like, this feels like Walmart Logan. I don't know what he's doing here. But after the eye, it's like, all right, this is a totally different character. I'm on board for this. Sure.
Yeah. As you were reading, Will, didn't you? You kept saying to me, it just feels like Logan, but he's not quite as good. And then after the eye was cut out, you were like, okay, this is new. This is new guy.
Burned out. I mean,
besides Logan, I think he might have the best in the circle fights that I in the whole series. I think. Besides Logan, I feel like no one can beat Shivers in the circle.
Yeah. So good, and he's such a great character as well.
I'm so glad he's in nearly all of the books.
I think he's in all of them, other than the Blade itself.
Yeah.
I think Joe Abercrombie, he must love Shivers as well, mustn't he? Put him in them all. It feels like he's got such a flair when he writes about Shivers, doesn't he? It just seems like he really enjoys putting him in there.
At the same time, though, he undercuts him because of his nickname. I mean, you remember how he got his nickname, right?
He falls in the river. I love that.
Was it?
Who is it? In the river? Is always like, sure, is a tall bastard, isn't he?
Oh dear! And I think he says that's because people shiver when they see me, and inside he's like, I can't be. I've got this room of veterans, deadly assassins, Vitari in front of him. He wants to impress Monza, and he's got all these people around him, and he's like, what can I say? Oh yeah, they just shiver when they see me. Obviously. And when you know the story already, it's just. Again, that humor, Joe Abercrombie, that's what makes it unique.
Yeah, absolutely. So, another book that is very humorous is The Heroes. If we go on into that with, I think Gorst obviously, steals the show. He's kind of like, I know you didn't like Blood Meridian, Mike, but he feels to me like Judge Holden, but if Judge Holden had a really high pitched voice and wasn't quite as
I look at Rimmer as just like the ultimate badass with a sword. He can do everything, he can do it wrong, but he was gifted with this really unpleasant voice. So it's like he'd be like the most macho guy in the world. But you talk like this. It's so good.
And his monologues when he's thinking of war and he's like, I love war, when he says it to
Fimri. That last monologue.
And then he expects her to kind of fall into his arms and say, Gorst, I love you. And then she just It really tears
He's
him
like,
down.
you really are a hollow man, aren't you? And he's just left there, just in shock, just like.
I love how in action, he's standing on the bridge and he's fighting on his own against the Northmen, and no problem. He's
I really thought that was going to be his blaze of glory moment, but damn, if he won, I was like, shit, all right. So.
Exactly, and then he's happy to do that, happy to fight on his own, and then he goes to Finry and he's just sweating, and he's so fit.
I see people who hate Finry because of that, and I'm like.
No.
He was with someone else, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
And she's right.
She had read Brimmer's inner monologue thoughts about Finry. I don't think.
No, I don't think you'd be happy.
I would have been too excited anyway. So.
He has some horrible thoughts, but it's just so funny. But yeah, I love the action of the heroes. Obviously, it is kind of one big book of action, but again, there is a diverse range, and like you mentioned earlier, Mike, there is this beginning of Joe Abercrombie's kind of style where he head hops, and this is where we first see this, and I completely love this. What do you guys think of that chapter?
That was really great. I also like the soldiers that are like trying to scare other people by saying, "Oh, the bloody nines over there coming out of the woods and shit." Stuff like that is always really, really fun. But that scene, that's the one that really kind of sticks with. But I mean, the Battle of the Heroes itself is just so much going on. I love the part where you've got Black Halder about to fight Black Dow. That's some of my favorite stuff. And Shivers is doing Shivers things. Yeah. And then of course the whole ending with Scale and all that. So many great action moments in that book that I won't lie. When I read the first quarter of the book, I was like, this just feels so different from every other First Law book I've ever read. But like the last 2/3, like, well, this feels like First Law now. And it is a big part because it's action. Just it's a slow build, with Tunney and things like that. But once you get to about the 1/3 mark, that book is just straight action the rest of the way, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
A standout character for me is Wirren of Bly, and he's a great example of, I think, something that Abercrombie does really well and you might not notice. And this is something that I think is just another sign of just his brilliance as a writer. He builds up this character, sort of like the legend of this character precedes we are ever seeing him do anything. And by the time we're ready to see him do something, we're just, all these expectations are cool. Of the kookiness of that character too.
He had seen a vision that he wouldn't die or something like that.
Yeah.
That was all bullshit.
Like a witch. He said, she tells him where he's gonna die and when, and it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? He's like,
he won't even wear armor or nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why he dies.
But no, chafes on my nipples.
Yeah. But yeah, such an eccentric character that Abercrombie, you don't notice. I think good authors do this, but they build up the character gradually. And then when they have these epic moments, we're like, whoa, but there's a lot of work that goes into it beforehand, I think. That's something really cool that you can sort of pinpoint with any character. But I just love the way that Wirren interacts with everybody. He's part of Kerndon Craw's crew, I think, right?
Yeah, he does such a great job of those little side characters that you think, okay, this is just there for body count, but he makes them all feel different. Like, for example, in the Secret Trilogy, there's a character who's always like cutting slices of cheese as thin as possible. And it's just like, what is that? But you know what? You grow to wait for those moments. And when they're happening, you're giggling about it. And you know exactly what character it is. So yeah, he's able to build those
Ed, you can relate to the cheese, right?
I can't. I can't believe, Dad bases Drem on William and then he bases the fella who likes cheese on me. It's just insulting. Come on. But I'm learning to live with what I get now. So, but I mean,
Svik is the funniest character as well. Though.
Yeah, I was helping
than cheese.
I was helping myself some cheese in the fridge the other day, and Dad came in. He just says, "See," and I was like, held my head in shame. So,
well, knowing your dad, he probably got like a 14th century dagger to cut the cheese with, right?
It's like, don't use that, son. Use my Sayax. And
that.
Here's my Danax just to cut this slice.
There are big dents in the table.
He did actually cut his cake once with one of his swords. So yeah,
that's so awesome.
There you go. But,
goals right there.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, other than cheese, we're in a Bly, so funny, and I kind of love how he ends with, he's fighting Gort and just a random spear out of nowhere. I think it's so fitting, but it's like that classical fantasy or classical book where they're building two people up to fight against each other. They're the best warriors on either side. It's like Achilles versus Hector, and that's very graceful in the Iliad. And then it gets to we're in a Bly versus Gort, and it's just a complete nobody who kills him. And I love, I do love when he's talking to Kerndon Craw on his deathbed. And he's like, I should have worn more armor.
Yeah. So it's so we talked about how Joe Abercrombie, he strips away all the romanticism, doesn't he? And this is a perfect example. I love it. It's from Gore's perspective at first, and he's so happy. This is the happiest he's been. He's like, "You complete me. Yes, we should be together forever, just like this."
I wish this moment lasts. Yeah,
and then
eternity.
a spear comes through Wirral Bly's side, and Gorse is so angry, and Wirral Bly just falls, and it is so anticlimactic, but in a way where I didn't feel disappointed. I just thought, Joe Abercrombie strikes again, again. And even though you should have learned by now, I just thought, oh, maybe this duel is actually going to play out. And
that was when the surprise death. I actually made the phrase Abercrombie a verb, because, like, I mean, when I was reading Guardians of the Moon and a character, you think, okay, they're setting this up to be like the hero, and then he dies. I'm like, holy Abercrombie, you know? It's just like, I'm just always expecting these things now to just call them an Abercrombie whenever there's like a surprise death. So,
yeah,
that's where it started.
Borrow that, yeah.
To get Abercrombie. Yeah, that sounds ominous, doesn't it?
It does.
To get Abercrombie. Yeah,
it does.
I think someone commented on one of our YouTubes. I think they called him Gerbil Crumbie. So we keep saying Gerbil Crumbie lately, don't we?
Or Jabbercrumbie.
You've been Gerbil Crumbied or something like that. So,
so random, but so good.
And we didn't tell him.
Got one for Red Country, if you guys don't mind.
Yeah,
let's do it.
I know everybody's probably going to go for Logan and Glam of Gold in the Circle, but for me, it was like I was still adjusting to the revelation that this was Logan. Okay, so that Lamb was Logan, and Shy South is just like it's probably my least favorite character in the First Law universe. Shy South, I'll be honest with that. But where she's still like, this guy's a fucking loser. He can't do anything right. And they're in that bar. And just when he first like just crushes that guy's face, I was like, all right. So that was just violence, you know. That's how I was feeling. But, that moment right there, as far as action goes, is probably the moment that sticks out for me the most in the book. That I was like, he's back, you know.
Yeah, that revelation is so good, and I love how she's building him up to be, you know, this complete coward and a nobody. And, you know, I think in the first chapter you hear a couple of his sayings, and you're just like,
say one thing.
You don't know him, like,
do it, live with the fear of it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like you don't know the real Lamb, you know.
Doing that in the eyebrow raises, I'm like, is it? You know, but he doesn't actually confirm it, I think, until that moment, really.
I think that scene, it really feels like, I don't know if you guys have seen The Outlaw Josie Wales with Clint Eastwood. He walks into this kind of bar scene, and he's got 3 people holding their guns up, and then he just pulls his gun out and shoots them all. But it feels kind of like that, you know. It does
makes me think, because I just watched Lonesome Dove, make me think of the part where Gus like slams the bartender's face on the bar, like, don't be disrespecting me. It's kind of the same thing there.
It's not
a little more brutal because it's Logan.
Yeah, he's like, and it's not a crime to hit a surly bartender, something like that. It's so funny.
This very much is a Western. I think this very much is a Western. Very, very Sergio Leone, Man with No Name kind of story, which I love.
Yeah.
Which, I think that kind of, when I first read the book, that wasn't what I was wanting. I think when I reread Red Country, which I will, I'm probably going to enjoy it a lot more than I did the first read.
I always think it just peaks a little bit too early with the action with Logan and Glamour Golden's duel. It's just so good that it's hard to top it. Absolutely, you know, it's one of the things we always say, Joe Abercrombie, a bad Joe Abercrombie book is still an amazing book, you know.
Absolutely. And if you want to be honest, I think this is the only book in the series that has a happy ending. I mean, it really does. It has our hero riding off into the sunset. I mean, he's like, But I mean, I really thought, okay, he's going to let Shivers finally fight, you know, Logan here. It's finally going to happen, and he does. He lets him ride off into the sunset. You know, so.
I mean, it seems happy compared to the others. If I'd read other books before, I'd be like, well, this is sad, isn't it? This is depressing.
For a first law book, it has.
And then I was like, oh my word, he's alive? Really? I thought that at the last moment.
That's the weird thing about
the last moment he's going to throw an axe.
And see Logan just topple from his saddle or something.
Yeah. Well, that's the weird thing for me about Red Country. Yeah, it should be a happy ending, but I feel like it is the saddest first law book. And it's because Logan doesn't succeed in suppressing the Bloody Nine, and that he learns that he can't be the man he wants to be. Also because of Casca being I want to talk
about that. I think that's from my negativity towards that book. It's like I said, my second favorite character. We'll talk about when we do the characters episode.
Okay, what happens to Casca? But I think those are the 2 reasons why, for me, I feel like it's the saddest of the books, because that's a side of humanity too, that, you know, sometimes we fail, you know, sometimes we don't become our best selves. And that's kind of tragic. And, and there's a whole side to a character like Casca. We won't get into it too much, Mike, but there's a side to that kind of behavior that makes him so much fun that is destructive at the same time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Like, you have that fun drunk uncle, but that you're also like, you probably need to reel this in or we're gonna be picking you off the concrete here in a couple of days, so no, I get it.
I think the one scene that always sticks out to me in Red Country is after Temple and Shy spend their night together, and Temple's like, I'm a good man now. I'm going to look after you. I won't ever let anyone hurt you.
You fucking
burst into the door, and Shy just sees his
out.
bare ass falling out of the window. It's just so funny. That threat of violence, and he's just goes self-preservation straight away, like Cosca does it in Cardotti's House of Pleasure. It's so good. It makes me laugh so much. Are you guys ready to move on to the final trilogy?
If I could just talk about one more scene in Red Country quickly.
All right, then.
The scene where Logan goes, I forgot his name, the guy they think is the leader of the resistance, when Logan goes back to save him, and they're holed up in this house, and Cosca's got all of his troops outside. He's just sending a few in at a time, and then he sends in, I've forgotten the name of the captain, but I think he's the fanatic, and he's seen as kind of the most fearsome warrior. And he goes in and he just sees this pile of heads on a table, and even he feels fear. And then it just ends his chapter, and then it goes back to someone with Cosca, and you just see this guy's head fly out, and you're just like, nothing is going to beat Logan, and he needs to learn this pretty sharpish, or he's going to have no one left. And that scene is just, even though it's smaller scale. And I think that Joe Cromwell, he always sets out to do something slightly different, doesn't he, in each book? And in Red Country, he gets that smaller scale scene just nailed perfectly.
And he has moments that he doesn't show you as well. So.
Yeah, especially the standalones. I don't feel like all three of those feel very, very different. Very, very different reasons.
Yeah. And it just adds so much more tension and also fear about the Bloody Nine as well. When you can't see him, when you're in his perspective, at least you know who he's aiming towards. But right then, you do not know where he's just going to appear. He could just sprout from the ground and just kill everyone, and I wouldn't be surprised. But that's just one of my favorite scenes as well. Like
that one short story in Sharp Ends with Logan is the best by far in that book, in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
that really added a new layer to him. And I bet all the time, big reveal.
That short story is just superb, I think, as well as the first story with Glockter in his prime,
where he's like a badass still.
And he's strutting, but he's like, Colin West, why don't we have a friendly little deal? And then he gets a bit angry quite quickly, doesn't he? When West,
and you have a hard time believing that Glockter was ever handsome. That just doesn't register.
I know, it felt so weird for a little bit, didn't it? But it was nice to see him walking night, properly, and then they realized what a total arse he was, and it's like, yeah.
But from the perspective of Salem Ruse, I love it. I love that, how the first chapter of Glockter and the Blade itself, and then you see him in Sharp Ends, and he hates him.
Super important character,
he hates him.
Yeah, you don't realize how much resonance that takes on until you get to Age of Madness.
There's your segue. Boom, boom.
There we go.
Very nice, guys. We didn't practice that at all.
On the spot. So let's talk about Age of Madness, A Little Hatred. So I love Age of Madness, some of the action sequences here, and so I think there's a huge range again, and he does something very different in some scenes as well, but which I'm sure we're going to talk about. But firstly, Mike, do you want to talk about some action scenes that you remember and love from A Little Hatred?
You want to always go to these big things, but one that really sticks out with me was just when things are first starting to really go to shit, and Savine finds herself in a world of trouble. This is someone who's obviously has lived a pretty charmed life up to this point. She's doesn't know it. She's banging the king, but she doesn't know who he is exactly. So the will be king. Things like that. Obviously Galacta's raised her away to know how to get what she wants. And she's always her dressing on point and all these things. So when things really, really go to shit there, and she finds herself in a bad situation, that's the action stuff that really kind of sticks with me. And also Broad, the moments with Broad, just kind of feeling like, wow, this guy is like, he's not the Bloody Nine, but he might have some Bloody Nine in there somewhere,
When he takes off his lenses.
His little tiny glasses, and it's like, okay, let's kill some people. No big deal.
Yeah, watch out when the glasses come off.
Yeah. You should run.
Yeah, I love that. Like you say, Mike, everything really starts going downhill from there, doesn't it? And I love the way that Abercrombie has done his revolution. It feels very different to what I've read in other books that have a revolution, where it feels like you're really up there in the face of the people, in the muck, in the dirt, and you see why they're so angry as well. And you kind of fear for Savine as well, but you also see Broad as well in that perspective. I think when I was reading with the battle scene with Finrey's forces and the Dogmen against Stour Nightfall, it felt like I was coming home to the First Law. I felt like, we're in Angland. This is great. It feels so good to be back here. And then we have the circle after as well. But I love that battle sequence with Dogman's forces and Stour Nightfall. Stour Nightfall's such a little git, isn't he?
That's such an awesome name, though. Like I was like, I want to steal that as my D&D character name. That's just that's just awesome. Stour Nightfall. I wish I could come up with something that awesome. That's
he has such good names, and the Nail as well. It's just.
There's this one scene, I think it's in A Little Hatred, but it might be in The Trouble with Peace. You'll have to, you guys are fresh. But it's the scene where Abercrombie does the perspective shift thing, and it's leading up to essentially what's a terrorist attack. And
that's in Trouble with Peace. But
it's Trouble with Peace. Okay, I'll just go with it anyway.
But he does it in both books. Yeah, he does it in both.
Yeah, well, the perspective shift. So we're getting basically in the heads of these various characters who are not major characters for the most part.
The little people.
And they're at this event where they're showing off this newfangled invention. It's like a steam engine, I guess, right? And they're the big inventor guy is there, and all the big this is going to be the new thing that changes. And I love how Abercrombie obviously incorporates industrialism and all this 19th century kind of stuff, late 18th, early 19th century themes. Really cool stuff. But that scene just sticks with me because of how something is about to happen because he's doing the perspective shift thing. And you feel, okay, something's up here, but you're not
cuts
sure
off
what.
halfway through the sentence, doesn't he?
And then the world exploded.
And then just the boom, and it's and then the breakers, who are essentially really nasty versions of the Luddites, the historical Luddites. They have their attack after that, and it's just this. And of course, Yoro's Sulfur has some.
Sulfur gets revealed to be like the biggest badass in the book.
He's terrifying. Him and his fists.
He is a character who, in every book, I felt very tense when he was in every scene. But you don't really realize how dangerous he is. And so he says so calmly to Orso, "Do you mind?" And Orso just says, "Okay."
Wasn't it when Orso had last seen him? He's like, "Can't you just do a spell?" And all that. And then he's like, "No, it doesn't work like that." And then he's like, "Okay, step aside."
And you see it from everyone's perspectives, and then he just starts eating them in front of everyone. And also he's like, "These are the people on my side."
And
what does that make
it's a new type of action from Abercrombie, where it's a terrorist attack which we haven't seen before in any of the books before, and it really goes into the world building, I think, as well, where lots of people say Abercrombie doesn't focus on world building, but I think he has lots of focus, but it's just not in any info dumpy ways. It's always through the characters, because if you think, harking back to the First Law trilogy, you find out about Adua because Logan is a kind of a fish out of water experiencing Adua. So you see it what it really is. So no, I think he does that through action as well.
I think that's people who haven't read the standalones that say he doesn't do good world building, because I feel like that's what the standalones were. He showed you all the rest of the continents, so.
And then also with that scene, I love that it also shows so much characterization, doesn't it? Also is one of my favorites of the new trilogy, and how he underestimates himself. And in this scene, he's terrified, but he pushes his mother behind him, and he doesn't even think about it. It's just a natural reaction, and he just stands there ready to kind of.
He's got a lot more of his dad in him than he thinks he does. Yeah, absolutely.
Talking about action scenes, it is partly an action scene where he has that friendly little contest with his dad, Jezzel. I think that is one of my favorite scenes, where also he's letting Jezzel get a few hits on him, but. Jezzel reminds me a bit of Gilderoy Lockhart in Harry Potter, in the Chamber of Secrets. And he's like, there's still some life in the old dog yet. And then he's just so chuffed with himself.
It was pretty obvious what you were going to do.
I just Jezza was just I just
when he's
love
happy,
him.
it's just you deserve to smile now after everything you've been
Cherish
through with
this
Bayaz.
moment.
Yeah,
Cherish this moment.
absolutely.
Well, since Philip cheated and started talking about Trouble with Peace, I got to talk. Probably my favorite battle in any of these books is Battle of Stauffenberg, because I think this might be the highest body count of any battle in this entire series. Because there's one part where he does describe where it was like this huge field and the bodies are stacked like 4 or 5 people high.
Yeah,
I think this might have the highest body count of any battle in this whole series, and it's just so unexpected. I did not go into this book expecting to see, Leo repeat the mistakes of his, his ancestors here. It was just heartbreaking to watch and to see it happen so quickly. I did not expect to have that battle to be in Trouble with Peace, and that's why I think that one really, really sticks with me.
That's just brilliant. Yeah, how we get the Hotspur character, meeting his demise, and the Henry V character in Orso finally kind of showing what he's capable of. And wow, though, I mean, Leo's moment when he has that, what should have been his glorious charge, right? I mean, and then they're just annihilated.
Yeah.
And he comes out of it. What is he? He's missing a leg, and
he's a leg and an arm.
And an arm, and
his friends.
And his friends are gone, and that is just shattering. I mean, literally and metaphorically.
Yeah, this guy literally went from the very top to the very bottom in one book.
Yeah. And while I think Leo, he's got some big flaws, but even you've got torn allegiances, because I love Orso. But when you think about it, Bayaz is with the Union, and so basically you should be siding with whoever's against him, and it's just, you do not know who you want to win, because Leo, in some ways, he's great. In others, he's so naive and he's so aggravating in others, isn't he? And then you've got Orso, who you also want to win. Basically, I just want them all to sit around the table, have a laugh, just get on with each other, and just work a way to get rid of Bayaz, just in a calm way.
As we're talking about action. Sorry, Mike.
The first book really did feel like the adults yelling at all the kids not to trust Bayaz. That's literally what it was. Like, listen to your parents, guys.
All the kids
we made the mistakes. Don't make the mistakes we did.
And all the kids are like, "Oh, Bayaz won't be able to do anything." I think Dad said something similar, and then he said that book 2 is about the parents being proved right.
Yeah, exactly.
You should have listened to Fenry. You should have listened to Fenry.
Talking of action, I love how Leo sees everything as action. Where he even encounters his very heterosexual friends wrestling in the bedroom, and immediately sees it as made me laugh so much. And he's like, they're just wrestling. What a strange position they're in. Oh dear. But they're just my friends, and so funny. I love that moment.
It's so much about his character, isn't it? That even though Joe Abercrombie, he wants that humorous scene, doesn't he? But he brings it into character again. But what would Leo think? He think this is the reality is the last thing
he's at the worst
evening. And now he's like, oh, they're wrestling. Okay. And then it's just, you see it from the beginning, and it's so funny the way his character unfolds. And in the very first scene you have with him, where he's like, I can have my glorious moment. And then after Finry puts him in his place and he's all sulky, he's like, well, I thought it was the right thing to do. It's so funny. I love the way that Joe Abercrombie, he makes action different through the characters.
Yeah. I would hate to have Joe Abercrombie write my death scene, because there are so many undignified demises, and he doesn't die, but how about the betrayal of Stour Nightfall? That moment.
That was shocking.
Yeah.
He did both of these first 2 books with a big shocking twist at the end. Friendly. Do we got to talk about that again? It might still be too soon, honestly, but that one as well, for sure. That really shocked me.
Clover's betrayal for at the beginning of the end of book 1 against Wonderful as well, and I really liked Wonderful, and I was like, Clover, you're an idiot. And then obviously when he does
Wonderful, I said friendly, I meant Wonderful.
Sure.
Clover it makes me think about what would have happened if Casca lived, because he's basically just flat out like, I'll switch sides. I like to be on the winning side.
I mean, I'm really scared of Clover, because I feel like when Stour Nightfall gave him the option at the end of A Little Hatred, there was no hesitation whatsoever. He made his decision in a split second, and it was like, this is what I'm going to do, and I don't care about anything else. So it's like, oh, now he's starting with Shivers. Is he going to change sides again? So
I want him as far away from characters I like, basically.
Just lock him away.
That moment when Clover, that's an action moment when he kills Wonderful at Stour Nightfall's command. He knows that if he doesn't do it, he's dead.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a you or me moment. And probably he knows that both of them would be dead, but he carries that with him. And that's when it bears fruit is when he gives it back to Stour Nightfall. So I don't think he does it quite in a Kafka-esque sense there. I think he's a little bit more of a survivor, but he has a conscience. And he really did love Wonderful, I think. There was that really beautiful dynamic between them.
Yeah.
So it was a sad moment, but it was a survival moment for him. So
yeah,
I can't remember. We talking about Wisdom of Crowds now, or
no?
I think you're just showing off now.
I mean, I can talk about some of my favorite action scenes in this. I'll tell you guys, they are there. There is action there.
Stop recording, but Mike, why don't you give us a spoiler-free thought then, a glimpse, if you may.
I know that Philip has said that if this book sticks the landing, that it might be his favorite of the two trilogies. I think you'll be happy. Let's just say that. I think you'll be happy. Like I said, I told some people that when I finished it, it was kind of, it felt like the cheerful, but to me, it was more like, I'm scared this is the last First Law book ever kind of thing, more than exactly what happens in it. But I don't think anyone, if you've liked the first two books, that you're going to be upset at all. That's all I can really say. Orbit doesn't want me to talk about until the 14th. So.
That's so exciting though. I can't wait to finish it. And really look
you'll finish it in a couple days. For sure.
Yeah.
I'm just going to blitz through it. A day dedicated to the Wisdom of Crowds, as it should be.
Yeah, I got people on my Discord that are taking the day off just to read the book. I'm like, that's what I like to hear.
It's dedication. It's dedication, and well earned as well.
Philip, will it be sliding into your TBR? Will it be taking a good place there?
Well, I pre-ordered it, so I'm hoping to get it on the day it's out, and I will probably put down everything else I'm reading and just blitz.
Joe cuts to the front of the line. Yeah.
Abercrombie gets to come to the front of the line for me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. A few authors.
If that one author wants to give me that second, I think it's called Bloodsworn. He wants to give me that second book of that, I'll cut that straight to the front of the line too. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
We can show off now. Welcome. It's very good. There's if you like action, then you'll like book 2.
I'm so excited for book 2 of Bloodsworn. Yeah, that's.
I think it's just gone through its coffee edit, so. Yeah,
it's nearly ready. And I've got to say, the cover art is looking phenomenal.
Oh, you can't beat
the first one.
Can you beat the Shadow of the Gods cover? Can you?
It just about tops it for me, but it's close.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is it still supposed to be May?
What's that?
Is he doing it every May?
Yeah.
Is that what he's going to do?
That's what the plan is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Like Joe putting out every one of these in September. Your dad putting out book every May. Wish more fantasy authors would do this. Right? I wish they would do this. Amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. We're lucky fans.
Well, I think if he ever tries to take day off, we'll just whip him back into that room. No, gotta get more words down.
Yeah,
we've got to see where the story goes.
Don't leave the room until that page is done.
Yeah, it's like that, and it's mum will say to dad, "Oh, can you make me a cup of tea?" And he'll be leaving his room like, "No, you go write. We'll do it." When he's not writing his book, no.
Can you just tell me this? Are there Norse words in book 2?
No,
I hope so.
He had to scrap them all.
No, I love the Norse. That's my favorite.
I think we've kind of asked him to include a couple more, haven't we?
Yeah.
And
I was watching Philip's review and he started speaking in Gaelic, I was like, "This is bullshit. How can I compete with this? My review's gonna suck."
Yeah, you do feel like that, don't you? Philip, you do put us all to shame. But in a good way.
No.
Well, I have an interview coming out with Abercrombie tomorrow, and Philip, your question did make his head explode. So just wait.
Cool. Cool. If I can make Abercrombie's head explode, then it's only a fair exchange, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So, there you go.
He's made all of our favorite characters' heads explode. So he's got he has it coming.
Payback.
Yeah.
And when this is out, your interview will be out as well. So we'll put a link to that. Hopefully it pops up on screen.
Yeah, we can't wait to watch. Absolutely, any Abercrombie interview is fun in our opinion. So exactly. But guys, thank you so much for doing this. Sorry to have taken up so much of your time, but obviously we all know that we can all gush about the First Law because there's so much to talk about. But thank you both of you. It's been an absolute honor having you both on the channel, and I'm not sure I speak for you as well. Will we've loved talking about the First Law, especially with you two.
Sure, let's do it 2 more times, huh?
Absolutely.
Let's do it, and many more. But for today,
it's been an honor. Sorry, I was just gonna say it's been an honor and a pleasure, guys. And I think I could have gone for hours longer, actually, but we don't want to push your viewers too much here, I suppose. But
too much first law, they might start going out and start slicing people.
We're just force feeding them Abercrombie books now. So have you guys read the Shattered Sea trilogy?
I haven't, but here's my plan. Since there is going to be no new first law book next year, I said I'm going to start them next year. So because I'll be needing my Abercrombie. He's working on a new series.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, I got that completed Shattered Sea up there. I might as well do that.
I thought so that they actually the first Abercrombie books I read, and I thought I think that the first law I prefer overall, but I think that it's so clever, the Shattered Sea, and I think that it is brilliant. A lot of people say it's YA. I don't think it is. It might be in the sense that people say, like The Hobbit is just because some younger adults could read it, but not in the sense of YA tropes.
Obviously, there's no Pharaoh style swearing in it, but
that takes a miss.
Yeah,
I need a director's cut where they put the cutscene back in.
Absolutely. But guys, thank you very much again. There will be descriptions below for the links to your channels. But in the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Truth and courage from the brothers Gwynne.
Truth and courage.
Later.